Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop. And today we're going to be doing an initial comparison between the Nike Lebron 22 and the Nike Lebron 23. So of course, these are LeBron James's shoes. And in terms of pricing, it kind of sucks how they increase the price so dang much, right? So the LeBron 22, they actually reduced the price from the LeBron 21, right? So this shoe was 180 bucks, still extremely expensive, but 180 bucks is a very nice price decrease, you know what I mean? But then to the 23 is $210, so $30 price increase, which is insane, you know what I mean? Like, come on Nike, come on LeBron, you know? But yeah, if you guys do want to cop, the LeBron 22 is on sale. You can get it for a pretty good price, you know? So I seen it for like 120 bucks, 130 bucks. So and also if you guys do want to cop this shoe, this is the Miami Twice colorway. A link will be in the description box as well. And if you do choose to get either of these shoes, it does help me out if you buy through the free link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support, or the YouTube links will be right over here. But let's get it started right off with the Tracciones. And in both of the colorways for these shoes that I have, they're both using a translucent rubber, right? So the LeBron 22 had phenomenal traction on a clean court. Like, it was so freaking nice. And also it's decoupled, right? But the main issue, of course, the Achilles heel for this shoe for me was the dust performance, right? It is a dust magnet. It picks up mad dust, and it's affected by dust a lot, you know what I mean? So you have to constantly wipe, or else you're gonna be sliding around all over the place. But again, if you're playing on an immaculate court, you have amazing softs, like a really nice bite, right? So trying this shoe on and also trying this shoe on, right? I actually vacuumed my floor the other day and cleaned it, you know, mopped it, and it's actually kind of clean, you know? So I tried the LeBron 23 as well, and the 22 actually had a little bit harder of a bite. The 23, it still had a pretty solid bite, but not amazing, you know? So I guess that's one thing that's different. But again, I didn't play in these yet, and I haven't broken them in, so we'll have to see on that. But right now, the 22 seems a little bit harder for the bite. But also, the 23 seems a little bit better for dust performance, you know what I mean? Because there's still a little bit of dog hair, you know. I can't get all the dog hair, you know, even though I vacuum and stuff. So I was still walking around all day in this shoe, and I don't know if you guys can see all the dog hair and dust and stuff on here, but it was still picking that up, but it seemed to be biting through that dog hair and dust way better than the LeBron 22. So it seems like the 23 is gonna have slightly better dust performance. We'll have to see if it's gonna be really good or not, but it seems better, right, than the 22, so that's a good thing. And also for durability, they're both not good. Like, the 22 has pretty soft rubber and the grooves are pretty thin, and same thing with the 23. The 23 also, I don't know what they're thinking, like, it's just really soft rubber and very thin grooves. So durability also doesn't seem great. And in terms of a squeak, the 22 is actually quite loud, you know what I mean? So that does that's nice. But also the 23 has a pretty nice loud squeak as well. Of course, squeak has nothing to do with performance, but if I was to pick which one's louder, I feel like right now so far the 22 is a little bit louder. But again, this is broken in, 23 is not. So there is the traction. They're moving on to the heel to toe transition. Yeah, I like the 22 better. You know what I mean? I like a really smooth heel to toe transition, especially here in the heel. So for the LeBron 22, it was using a Cushlon 2.0 midsole, I believe, right? And here in the heel, it is kind of exposed. So it does allow for a little bit of heel compression. And also, we do have a rounded shape. So that just feels way better, right? But here in the 23, it's just, look at it. It's rubber and plastic. So it's pretty clunky feeling here in the heel. I mean, one thing that helps it is this kind of like rounded shape, but it's still clunky here in the heel, which I'm not a huge fan of, right? One thing that definitely does help it is that the drop-in midsole is extremely soft, right? So I can definitely feel my heel digging into that drop-in midsole, which it feels still nice. I'm not saying it's like boot-like or super duper clunky, but still, because of the outside of the shoe, it's a little clunky, right? And then here in the forefoot, the LeBron 22 actually has a little bit more of a curved shape, which does feel a little bit nicer to me as well. And here in the forefoot, they're both like pretty nice for the flexibility. You know what I mean? Same thing here in the LeBron 23. You know, so when I first got this, it was really stiff, but you know, I was walking around this shoe all day, and it's pretty easy to flex now. I would say the 22 right now is still a little bit hard to flex. You know what I mean? Like, look at that, 23. I guess 23 is actually a little bit easier to flex now that it's broken in a little bit, you know what I mean? And also the 22 seems a little bit more springy, you know? But torque support in both of the shoes is extremely good. So yeah, I like the overall heel to toe transition. better here in the 22. And then moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup is very different, and I don't know which one I like better, right? Because they both have some pros and cons in my personal opinion, right? But maybe overall I like the 22 a little bit better though, you know? So yeah, as far as the core feel goes, the 22 is way better. The 22 has better core feel in the forefoot and here in the heel. The 23 is actually quite high up off the ground. It's similar to the Jaw 3 in the forefoot, but pretty high up off the ground in the heel. And also, I don't know why, but the 23 feels way higher to me as far as the offset goes. Like the offset is pretty high here in the 23, and the 22, it's still high here in the 22, but it's a little bit flatter, it feels like. I don't know why they made the heel feel so much higher here in the 23, but anyways, that's what it feels like to me. So core feel better here in the 22. Also, another thing that I like about the 22 a little bit better is that with this cush line, there is a little bit more compression here in the heel, which I like, you know what I mean? I mean, here in the 23, again, with the compression in the heel, I can feel my heel digging into the drop-in, which feels really comfortable and nice. And also, there is a lot of compression there, like right underneath your foot for the underfoot cushion, but there's nothing on the outside, so it does feel clunky still there, right? But as far as like the underfoot feel and also the step in comfort, the 23 is way better, you know? So here in the 22, they were using a top-loaded Zoom turbo unit in the forefoot and then a bottom-loaded Zoom unit here in the heel. And yeah, the Zoom turbo unit, you can feel it feels nice. It has a nice compression and bounce, you know what I mean? Also, it's articulated, so as a bounce like in that specific area, you know? But then here in the 23, that bounce is translated into the entire footbed. You know what I mean? So it is using Zoom X. It's a Zoom X drop-in. They're using two different types of foam, but underneath your foot, pretty much your entire foot, you have like that white foam, right? And that white foam seems to be the Zoom X. And with that, especially in the heel, you have a nice soft feel, right? It's right when you put on the shoe, it's soft, right? So because your foot is right on top of the foam, there's no strobe board, there's no insole or anything like that. Your foot is right on top of that foam. So right when you put it on, it's soft, especially in the heel, but also in the forefoot, right? But also once you start kind of like, you know, moving, you know, jumping around a little bit, it also has a nice little bounce, you know what I mean? So I definitely do like how that feels a lot better than the 22, you know what I mean? So again, there are some things, right? I do like the core feel better, I do like the heel compression better here in the 22, but the 23, just the underfoot feel, has a little bit more of a bounce, you know what I mean, as well. I guess the Zoom turbo unit in the forefoot's a little bit bouncier here in the 22, but the 23 with the Zoom X still has a nice little subtle bounce as well, you know what I mean? The heel definitely gets bouncier too, so they both have pros and cons. I'm not 100% sure which one I like better for sure, but I would say I like 22 just a tiny bit better, you know? But again, like the drop-in midsole is still nice for the underfoot, so it's kind of hard. And also with the drop-in, the lockdown's really nice because of the texture, right? The texture is like kind of sticky, so it just like glues my sock and foot in place as opposed to like just a regular insole, which doesn't really do that, you know what I mean? So, which we'll get into lockdown. So there's that. Moving on to the upper, so the 22, like you don't even need to break it in. You know, it's just soft right at the box, but also once you break it in, it does get even softer. It's not a super thin material, you know what I mean? But it doesn't feel super duper thick. I would definitely say it's on the thicker side of things, however, but it is using the synthetic leather material, right? One thing I don't like about it though is that it does get really dirty though. It gets really dirty very quickly, so just be careful with that. But yeah, it's soft though. It's really soft. It conforms to your foot very well, but overall it does have pretty good support, right? But then here in the 23, they are using a jacquard material. So they're calling it an engineered jacquard. And when I first got it, it was so freaking stiff, right? But you know, when I was walking around all day in the shoe, and it did get a little bit softer. You know, so I feel like it'll get a little bit softer, but still, it feels like it's never gonna get as soft as the 23, right? Just look at this. Look at how soft it is. Look at how easily it gets, right? The 23, definitely not as much. Look at, you know, so it's definitely way stiffer. In terms of like thickness though, it feels like the 22 is a little bit thicker though. You know, because the jacquard is actually kind of thin, but like it's just way more glued down, it feels like, you know, that's why it's stiffer and more rigid. So again, we'll have to see on how the 23 breaks in, but yeah, in terms of like how soft the material is, the 22 is way softer and way more comfortable. And also on the sides where the actual like kind of plastic is, it does pinch the top of my foot just a tiny bit. It's not painful or anything, it's just a little bit uncomfortable, right? So, but also in terms of like quality, I would say the 23 is a little bit better, you know what I mean? Because also you can see like the jacquard is embroidered. You can see the actual palm tree design on it, which looks really nice in my personal opinion. So yeah, I do like the quality. But also another thing I don't like is that it does crease very easily. I don't know if you guys can see, but the crease marks on the shoe are gonna go crazy on the actual plastic. So just keep in mind for that as well. As far as the tongue goes, It's around the same for the padding, but the 22 has this kind of like really nice quilted pattern on it, so it feels a little bit cozier because of that. The 23, however, it feels like the foam is a little bit thicker though. You know what I mean? So it's just they're around the same in terms of like how it feels on foot, on top of your foot at least. And then they're both half booty construction tongues, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And also here in the ankle area is pretty much the exact same. I guess LeBron just really likes this ankle area material, like the foam, because they've been using this since the LeBron 20, right? So the actual foam also has kind of like holes in it, but it feels more like a memory foam, and it's really soft. It's not super thick and super plush, but it just has a really nice like soft feel because it feels more like a memory foam. So I do like that. It's pretty much the exact same both of the shoes. So yeah, I like the LeBron 22 material a little bit better. Like in terms of quality, I like 23 bit better because, you know, the 22 is just, it's like a synthetic leather. It's not the best for quality, but in terms of like how it feels, it's just softer, it's more comfortable, it's a little bit cozier, you know what I mean? So right now I like the 22 a little bit better, but the 23 we'll have to see on how it breaks in, right? And now moving on to the fit. So I went true to my Nike size for both of these shoes. I went the exact same size for both of them, and the 23 is actually a little bit longer, right? So the 22, my toes are like right there, right at the edge of the shoe, right? But for the 23, my toes are like right there. There's a little bit extra length, right? I wouldn't, it doesn't merit like going down half a size, I don't think though, you know what I mean? Because I feel like if you went down half a size, it might be a little bit too short. So just be careful with that, because also the toe box is extremely freaking snug. Like I can't curl my toes up at all. And with this jacquard, like it's glued down, it's a little bit more rigid feeling, so it's not forgiving at all, you know? So I can't curl my toes up at all. Be careful with that. The 23, it's still a snug fit, and once you break it in, it does get even softer. And because of that, like when my foot's laying flat here in the 22, it's like pretty snug. But then because it's a little bit softer than the 23, I can curl my toes up just a little bit more. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit different there, especially because of the material. And also as far as the width goes, it's around the same. You know what I mean? They're both around normal width. You know, I would say maybe if I'm nitpicking, the 22 feels a little bit narrower to me because it's a little bit shorter, you know, or I guess this is a perfect fit for me, and then this is a little bit long. So because of that, you know, the 22 feels a little bit narrower, but for the most part, it's pretty similar as well. So yeah, I would suggest just going true to size for most people in both of the shoes. Just know that the 23 is probably gonna be a little bit long, right? But I don't really mind it because, you know, again, it's a snug fit here in toe box, and also I really like the drop-in midsole and the texture, and the lockdown seems really good, and because of that, I don't really mind the extra length either. So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown, I mean, the 23 feels like it's just a little bit tankier, a little bit stiffer because of the overall material, you know what I mean? I didn't have any issues here in the 22, you know, even though there's really no kind of like sidewall here in the forefoot, you know, acting as a lateral counter. The material was supportive enough for me. You know what I mean? So that was fine. And in terms of like torsion support and like how the overall shoe feels underneath your foot, like for the sole of the shoe, the 22 is still stiff, and so is the 23. You know, I would actually argue the 23 feels a little bit softer because it is able to flex a little bit easier. But they're both like on the stiffer side of things, right? But obviously in terms of lockdown and also lateral containment, the 23 is going to be better because you have three things for the actual lockdown and also lateral containment, right? So if you look at the drop-in midsole, first of all, again, that texture underneath your foot is really sticky, so it grabs your sock, it grabs your foot, it really keeps it in place inside or on top of the drop-in midsole, right? But also if you look at the side of the drop-in, you have kind of like a, first of all, and the heel is very, very cupped, but also there is a little bit of a raised sidewall in the midfoot and forefoot. It's not super high, but it does raise up a little bit for the sidewall. And then obviously on the outside of the shoe, you have this crazy plastic, right? So your foot is not gonna come out of the footbed at all. So this shoe feels a little bit more supportive for the upper and also for the lateral containment. But again, 22 was still nice and adequate for me, right? And most people, it was good, right? In terms of lateral stability, I wonder what, yeah. They're both around the same pretty much, right? They do have an outrigger here, which is very, very nice to see. You know, LeBron's used to not have an outrigger, if you guys remember like the LeBron 15. But yeah, these two both have a wide base and an outrigger. So that's nice. Lateral stability was nice for me in the 22. 23 feels nice as well. However, the 22, the heel lockdown was good. I didn't have any issues with the heel lockdown, even though it's still a little bit stiffer. But then the LeBron 23, I feel like because of the upper is a little bit stiffer, and also the sole of the shoe is a little bit stiffer as well. Both of those combined, it feels like my heel wants to pop out a little bit. So it's not terrible though. It's not like a deal breaker or anything to me, but it's just like going up and down just a tiny bit for me. So heel lockdown just feels a little bit better for me in the 22, but we'll have to see again how the 23 breaks in. So yeah, there is a support in lockdown there. Moving on to the weight of the shoe, I mean, the 23 feels pretty heavy, and the 22 is also kind of heavy, but not as heavy as the 23, right? So the 22 is 13.8 ounces, so pretty dang heavy still. 13.8 versus 14.2, but the other shoe is 14.4. So yeah, 14.4 and 13.8 ounces, so like half an ounce heavier for the LeBron 23, which kind of sucks, but overall you can't really tell too much of a difference in weight, right? But for me, I would say the biggest or two biggest differences is the cushion. Obviously the cushion feels pretty different, but also the upper is pretty dang different in how it feels on foot, right? So the LeBron 23 a lot stiffer, a lot more rigid. 23 is just way softer, and the cushion, the underfoot cushion step-in comfort is better and softer in the 23, while the 22 is still nice, especially because of the Zoom turbo unit, but it's not as soft because, you know, your foot is right on top of the drop-in in the 23 as opposed to the 22. So yeah, that is the biggest difference to me, right? And now moving on to the aesthetics, yeah, definitely the 23. Oh my goodness, they killed it for the design. I love how the shoe looks, you know what I mean? Also, I really like how they didn't make the plastic material like the LeBron 11. You guys remember the LeBron 11 with the foam posit pretty much, right? With this plastic, it was so stiff, especially here in the, look at this. It pretty much covers the entire toe box. So it's just so stiff, right? And that's not gonna break it, right? But with this, it actually does still bend, you know, especially like where your forefoot, like where your foot actually bends, there is a little bit of a dipping, so it still allows this material to actually bend, which I like, you know. But one thing I don't like about it, the material, is that there's a lot of crease marks, which kind of sucks. So yeah, I feel like most people would agree with me that the 23 looks better than the 22. I mean, 22 looks still pretty good, but 23 just kills it. So for his past couple shoes, I would say the 20 and the 23 are up there, like my favorites. I don't know which one looks better. And then I would say the 21. And then I'll say the 22 is my least favorite. You know what I mean? But I'm not saying the 22 looks ugly, but just my least favorite. So there's that. Tell us what you guys think looks better down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, yeah, it's a little bit hard to tell right now which shoe I like better. You know what I mean? Because there's pros and cons to both shoes. You know what I mean? We'll have to see again on how the LeBron 23 breaks in, and if it breaks in nicely, maybe like the upper gets way softer, and if the traction isn't as bad on dust, you know, as the LeBron 22, then definitely I feel like I like the LeBron 23 better, right? But for right now, I would say it's kind of hard to tell, you know what I mean? Because they are pretty different feeling. I don't know how they change it up so much in terms of how the shoe feels, you know what I mean? Because I feel like the 20, 21, 22 all felt pretty similar, right? But with the 23, they really change it up, especially in how it feels on foot. The cushion, the upper, you know what I mean? So, yeah. That about concludes my initial comparison between the LeBron 22 and the LeBron 23. Again, if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I try to leave in the free link in the description box. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.